Move it, lady, you're blocking traffic. The horn blared again, long, angry, unforgiving. The old sedan sat helpless on the shoulder of Route 17, hazard lights blinking weakly like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. Its hood was popped, steam curling into the cold morning air. Angela Brooks stood beside it, palms shaking, one hand gripping the edge of the hood, the other clutching her purse like a lifeline. She was 62 years old, and right now, she felt invisible. "Come on," a man shouted from a pickup truck, slowing just enough to yell before speeding off. "If you can't drive, stay home." Angela flinched. She hadn't broken down on purpose. She hadn't planned for this. The car had coughed once at the red light, shuddered like it was gasping for breath, and died, right as the morning traffic surged around her. She tried the ignition again. Click, click, nothing. Her phone buzzed in her hand. 8:17 a.m. She was late. Again. Her supervisor had already warned her twice this month. One more incident and they'd have to talk. Angela closed her eyes for a moment, breathing through the tightness in her chest. "Lord, please," she whispered, "just help me get through today." A city bus roared past, inches from her elbow, rocking the car slightly. The driver didn't even look at her. A woman in an SUV slowed down, rolled her window halfway. "You need to get that junk off the road," she snapped. "People have places to be." Then the window rolled back up. Angela swallowed hard. She was used to this, used to people assuming she was careless, assuming she didn't belong, assuming she was the problem. She reached into the glove compartment for the jumper cables she prayed were still there. They weren't. Her hands trembled harder now. The air smelled like exhaust and cold asphalt. Her knees ached, her back screamed from years of lifting, bending, working jobs that never came with benefits or appreciation. She glanced at the thin gold bracelet on her wrist, the only thing she'd kept from her late husband. "Just get through today," she told herself again. That's when she heard it. A police siren. Short, sharp, close. Angela's stomach dropped. The cruiser pulled up behind her car, lights flashing but siren off. The driver's side door opened slowly. She felt every muscle in her body tense. She'd lived long enough to know what traffic stops could turn into, especially when you looked like her, stood like her, existed like her. The officer stepped out. White male, mid-40s, tall, broad shoulders, calm posture. His name badge read, Officer Daniel Harris. He approached carefully, one hand resting near his belt, not threatening but alert. Angela straightened instinctively, smoothing her coat, her heart pounding. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "are you okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. No, the car just died. I tried to move it, but—" "I saw," he said, glancing at the hood, the blinking hazards, the backed-up traffic. A man leaned out of a passing car and yelled, "You gonna ticket her or what? She's causing a mess." Officer Harris turned his head sharply. "Keep moving," he said, voice firm. The man scoffed, but drove off. Angela exhaled without realizing she'd been holding her breath. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to hold anyone up." Officer Harris looked at her then, really looked. The tightness around her eyes, the way she stood like she was bracing for impact, the fear she tried to hide behind politeness. "It's okay," he said. "Let's see what we can do." He popped the hood wider and leaned in, studying the engine. Angela clasped her hands together to stop them from shaking. "I called a tow company. They said it might be an hour. That long on this shoulder isn't safe, especially with traffic this heavy." Another car honked aggressively as it swerved around them. Officer Harris stepped between Angela and the road without thinking. That small act, that single shift of his body hit her harder than any insult had. "You can wait in my cruiser," he said. "It's warmer." She hesitated. Old instincts tugged at her. "I'm fine right here," she said softly. He didn't push. "All right," he nodded, but I'm staying with you." He tried the engine. Nothing. Checked the battery. Dead. "Looks like your alternator finally gave up," he said. Angela sighed. "Figures." He glanced at the car again. "You drive this every day?" "Yes, sir. To work." "Where do you work?" "St. Luke's Community Center, cafeteria." Officer Harris froze just for a half second. "St. Luke's?" he repeated. "Yes," she said, confused. "On Maple and 3rd. He straightened slowly. Something unreadable crossed his face. "How long have you worked there?" he asked. Angela shrugged. "Oh, on and off for years, since the late 90s. Officer Harris stared at her now, eyes narrowing, not suspicious but searching. Angela felt a flicker of unease. "Is something wrong?" she asked. He shook his head quickly. No, nothing. Just..." A memory stirred. A long buried one. A night he rarely talked about. Sirens, smoke, a collapsing roof, and a woman who refused to leave when everyone else ran. He looked at Angela again, really looked. "What's your name, ma'am?" he asked quietly. "Angela Brooks." The name landed like a punch to his chest. His breath caught. "No," he whispered. Angela frowned. "Sir?" Officer Harris stepped back, disbelief written all over his face. "Angela Brooks," he repeated. "From St. Luke's." "Yes," she said slowly. "Why?" His voice dropped. "Ma'am, do you remember a fire about 12 years ago?" Her eyes widened. The road noise faded. The cold morning vanished. She saw flames again, heard screaming, smelled smoke and fear. She swallowed. "Yes," she said softly. Officer Harris' hands trembled. "Because," he said, barely audible now, "you once pulled 3 officers out of a burning precinct kitchen." Angela stared at him. "That night," he continued, voice thick, "you saved my entire unit." Silence fell between them. The traffic, the horns, the insults, none of it mattered anymore. Angela's knees nearly gave out. "Oh," she whispered, and suddenly, everything was about to change.
Angela Brooks didn't sit down. She couldn't. The world around her felt suddenly unsteady, like the pavement beneath her shoes had shifted without warning. You were there?" she asked quietly. Officer Daniel Harris nodded once, slowly, like the weight of the memory pressed on his neck. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I was." Traffic continued to crawl past them, horns blaring now and then, but it all felt distant, muffled, unreal. Angela pressed a hand to her chest. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I never knew any of their names." Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for over a decade. "I never forgot yours." Her eyes filled. 12 years ago, she had been younger, stronger, still grieving but less tired, still believing the world might bend toward kindness if you showed enough of it. That night had bent her instead. Daniel glanced toward his cruiser, then back at her. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said. "We'll talk." He guided her carefully to the patrol car, opening the door and helping her in. She hesitated only a moment before sitting, the warmth hitting her stiff joints like a blessing. As he closed the door, Daniel leaned against the hood of his cruiser and stared down the road. He could still see the flames, still hear the radio crackling with panic, still smell the burning oil and smoke. Back then, he'd been a rookie, barely 6 months on the force, eager, nervous, trying too hard to prove himself. The call had come in just after midnight, fire at the old precinct annex, possible trapped personnel. They'd arrived to chaos. The building had been undergoing renovations, old wiring, temporary generators. One spark had turned into an inferno. Daniel remembered sprinting inside with 2 other officers, coughing, eyes burning, heart hammering. They'd made it to the kitchen area when the ceiling collapsed. Smoke swallowed them whole. One officer had fallen, another was screaming, disoriented. Daniel had been sure that was it, sure he was going to die. Then a voice cut through the smoke, strong, clear, unafraid. "Stay down," the woman had shouted. "Follow my voice." Angela Brooks. She hadn't been a firefighter, hadn't been a cop, hadn't been trained for any of it. She was a cafeteria worker, staying late to clean because someone else had called out. She'd seen the fire start, seen the officers run in, and when the alarms failed and no one came back out, she'd gone in after them, against every rule, against common sense, against fear. She'd wrapped a wet cloth around her face, dropped to the floor, and crawled through smoke thick enough to blind. Daniel remembered the feel of her hand gripping his sleeve, firm, unyielding. "You don't get to give up," she'd said. She'd dragged one officer at a time, back and forth, until all three were out. She'd collapsed on the pavement, coughing blood, her hair singed, her hands burned. And then, before the ambulances had even arrived, she'd asked one question. Did everyone make it? Daniel blinked back to the present as he climbed into the driver's seat. Angela sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. "I never thought anyone remembered," she said softly. Daniel turned to her. "How could we not?" he asked. "They gave you a commendation." She smiled faintly. "A plaque." His brow furrowed. "You didn't—" "She didn't keep it," said. "Didn't feel right." He stared at her. "You saved 3 officers. You nearly died." She shrugged. "I did what anyone should." Daniel shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "Most people don't." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy with everything unsaid. "Why didn't you ever come back?" he asked finally. Angela looked out the window. "They fixed the building," she said. "New management came in. They didn't need me anymore." "That's it?" She hesitated. "My husband died 2 years after that," she added quietly. "Cancer. I took what work I could." Daniel felt something twist painfully in his chest. "All these years, and you're still working, still struggling." Angela smiled sadly. "Life doesn't stop being hard just because you did something good once." Daniel leaned back in his seat, staring at the dashboard. He thought about the men he'd seen promoted, the pensions, the ceremonies, the speeches about brotherhood and sacrifice, and then he thought about Angela Brooks standing on the side of a highway being yelled at for blocking traffic. Something burned behind his eyes. "This isn't right," he said. Angela turned to him. "What isn't?" He met her gaze. "That you're still paying for a kindness that saved lives, including mine." Her eyes softened. "You don't owe me anything," she said gently. Daniel laughed bitterly. "That's where you're wrong," he said. "I owe you everything." A tow truck finally appeared in the side mirror, crawling through traffic. Daniel got out to speak with the driver, arranging for Angela's car to be taken to a nearby garage on the department's dime. When he returned, Angela protested. "You don't have to." "I do," he cut in, but his voice was kind. "And I will." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she said. He smiled. "For today or for 12 years ago?" She smiled back. "Both." As the tow truck hooked up her car, Daniel made a decision. A quiet one, a dangerous one. He wasn't just going to help her get to work. He was going to make sure the world remembered who Angela Brooks was and why she mattered. What neither of them knew yet was that honoring her past would stir up old resentment, buried guilt, and people who preferred heroes like Angela to stay forgotten, and helping her now would put Daniel directly in their way.
The precinct hadn't changed much. The same brick exterior, the same heavy doors that groaned when they opened, the same faint smell of coffee, old paper, and disinfectant that clung to the halls. Angela Brooks paused just inside the entrance, her hand tightening around the strap of her worn purse. "I haven't been here since—" her voice trailed off. 12 years, Daniel said gently. She nodded. "It feels smaller," she murmured. Daniel gave a small, sad smile. Funny thing about memory. They stepped inside together. Conversation hushed almost immediately. A few officers glanced up from their desks,
eyes flicking from Daniel's uniform to Angela's face, and then lingering just a little too long. Recognition sparked in some, confusion in others, discomfort in a few. Daniel felt it instantly, the shift in the room's energy. Captain Lewis emerged from his office, a tall man with graying hair and a permanent crease between his brows. He stopped short when he saw Angela. "Well, I'll be damned," he said quietly. Angela stiffened. Lewis walked closer, studying her face like he was afraid the memory might vanish if he blinked. "You're," he cleared his throat, "you're Angela Brooks." She nodded politely. "Yes, sir." For a moment, the captain said nothing. Then he extended his hand. "You saved 3 of my officers, including my nephew." Angela took his hand, surprised by the firmness of his grip. "I just did what needed doing," she said. Lewis shook his head slowly. "No, you did what no one else could." Around them, whispers began. "That's her? The woman from the fire? I thought she moved away. Didn't she get a medal or something?" Daniel watched as Angela shrank slightly under the attention. She wasn't used to this. She'd never been. Captain Lewis gestured toward the briefing room. "Let's sit," he said. "We should talk." As they walked, a few officers followed with their eyes. One of them, Sergeant Paul Mercer, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Mercer had been there that night too, but unlike Daniel, he didn't look grateful. He looked irritated. Inside the briefing room, Lewis pulled out a chair for Angela. "Coffee?" he asked. She smiled politely. "I'm fine, thank you." Daniel stood near the wall, arms folded, watching closely. Lewis cleared his throat. "I'll be honest," he said. "We thought you'd left town." Angela hesitated. "I stayed," she said softly. "I just kept living." Lewis nodded slowly. "You were supposed to be honored, properly. Ceremony, press, the whole thing." Angela looked down at her hands. "I didn't want to fuss. People were hurt. I didn't feel like a hero." Daniel clenched his jaw. "That's not how it was recorded," he said. Lewis's expression tightened. "What do you mean?" Daniel stepped forward. "The report minimized her role," he said. "It made it sound like the officers found their own way out." Silence dropped like a stone. Lewis turned sharply. "That's not true." Daniel met his gaze. "Read it again." Lewis's expression tightened. "I will," he said carefully. From the doorway, Mercer scoffed. "Oh, come on. That was years ago. Everyone did their part." Angela flinched at the tone. Daniel turned slowly. "Did you?" he asked quietly. Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Watch your mouth, Harris." "I'm watching it. Are you watching your conscience?" Lewis raised a hand. "Enough." Mercer shrugged. "All I'm saying is we don't need to dig up old stories." Angela finally looked up. "Why?" she asked softly. The room went still. Mercer hesitated, then laughed without humor. "Because it's complicated," he said. Angela studied him. "No, it's not." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I went into that building because I heard someone screaming. I didn't stop to think about who they were or what color their badge was. I just knew someone needed help." Mercer looked away. Angela continued. "I didn't ask for recognition, but I also didn't ask to be erased." Daniel felt his throat tighten. Lewis exhaled slowly. "She's right," he said. Mercer scoffed again. "So now we're rewriting history?" Lewis turned sharply to him. "No, we're correcting it." Mercer's jaw tightened. "You know what happens when stories change," Mercer said. "People start asking questions."
Lewis didn't blink. Good. Angela shifted in her chair. I didn't come here for trouble, she said. Officer Harris just wanted to help me with my car. Daniel shook his head. No, he said gently. I wanted to help you with something bigger. She looked at him, eyes searching. What? She asked. Justice, he said simply. The door opened again. An older officer stepped in, retired Detective Frank O'Neill, now volunteering part-time. He stopped when he saw Angela. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. It really is you. Angela smiled faintly. Hello, sir. O'Neill removed his hat slowly. I told them, he said quietly. I told them that night. She saved us. Mercer stiffened. Frank. O'Neill cut him off with a raised hand. Don't, he said. I stayed quiet long enough. He turned to Angela. I'm sorry, he said. We're all sorry. We let the story get convenient. Angela swallowed. Why? She asked. O'Neill sighed. Because it was easier, he admitted. Because sometimes people don't like being reminded they needed saving. Daniel felt something harden inside him. Lewis straightened. This ends now, he said. We're reopening the record. Mercer slammed his hand on the table. You do that, and you'll stir up a mess you can't control. Lewis met his glare. Then maybe it's time. Angela shifted in her chair. I didn't come here for trouble, she said. Officer Harris just wanted to help me with my car. Daniel shook his head. No, he said gently. I wanted to help you with something bigger. She looked at him, eyes searching. What? He asked. Justice, he said simply. The door opened again. An older officer stepped in, retired Detective Frank O'Neill, now volunteering part-time. He stopped when he saw Angela. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. It really is you. Angela smiled faintly. Hello, sir. O'Neill removed his hat slowly. I told them, he said quietly. I told them that night. She saved us. Mercer stiffened. Frank. O'Neill cut him off with a raised hand. Don't, he said. I stayed quiet long enough. He turned to Angela. I'm sorry, he said. We're all sorry. We let the story get convenient. Angela swallowed it. Why? She asked. O'Neill sighed. Because it was easier, he admitted. Because sometimes people don't like being reminded they needed saving. Daniel felt something harden inside him. Lewis straightened. This ends now, he said. We're reopening the record. Mercer slammed his hand on the table. You do that, and you'll stir up a mess you can't control. Lewis met his glare. Then maybe it's time. Angela shifted in her chair. I didn't come here for trouble, she said. Officer Harris just wanted to help me with my car. Daniel shook his head. No, he said gently. I wanted to help you with something bigger. She looked at him, eyes searching. What? He asked. Justice, he said simply. The door opened again. An older officer stepped in, retired Detective Frank O'Neill, now volunteering part-time. He stopped when he saw Angela. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. It really is you. Angela smiled faintly. Hello, sir. O'Neill removed his hat slowly. I told them, he said quietly. I told them that night. She saved us. Mercer stiffened. Frank. O'Neill cut him off with a raised hand. Don't, he said. I stayed quiet long enough. He turned to Angela. I'm sorry, he said. We're all sorry. We let the story get convenient. Angela swallowed. Why? She asked. O'Neill sighed. Because it was easier, he admitted. Because sometimes people don't like being reminded they needed saving. Daniel felt something harden inside him. Lewis straightened. "This ends now," he said. "We're reopening the record." Mercer slammed his hand on the table. "You do that," he snapped, "and you'll stir up a mess you can't control." Lewis met his glare. "Then maybe it's time," he said. Angela looked between them, fear flickering. "I don't want anyone hurt," she said. Daniel stepped beside her. "No one's hurting you anymore," he said quietly. "Not today." But as Mercer stormed out of the room, his face dark with resentment, Daniel knew the truth was already doing what it always did, making enemies. In the moment Angela Brooks stepped back into that precinct, the past had officially stopped staying quiet. The phone call came just after sunset. Daniel Harris was halfway through reheating leftover soup when his phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. The name on the screen made his stomach tighten. Captain Lewis. Daniel answered immediately. "Sir?" "Come down to the precinct," Lewis said. His voice was calm, but stripped of warmth. "Now." The line went dead. Daniel stared at the phone for a long moment. He'd been on the force long enough to know what that tone meant. Not urgency, not panic. Control. He shut off the stove, grabbed his jacket, and headed out into the evening. The precinct looked different at night. The parking lot lights cast long, lonely shadows. The building hummed softly, like it was awake even when most of the city slept. Inside, the usual chatter was gone. Only a handful of officers remained, their voices low, glances sharp. Daniel felt eyes follow him as he walked down the hallway. Whispers again. Not curious this time. Cautious. Captain Lewis's office door was open. The lights inside were bright, harsh. Daniel stood behind his desk. Across from him sat Deputy Chief Ronald Weaver, a man Daniel had only seen a few times in his career. Weaver didn't stand when Daniel entered. He didn't smile either. "Officer Harris," Weaver said, "have a seat." Daniel did. Lewis remained standing, jaw tight. Weaver folded his hands slowly. "You've caused a bit of disruption today," he said. Daniel held his gaze. "I told the truth." Weaver nodded once. "That's rarely the issue. Timing is." Lewis exhaled. "Ron," Weaver raised a finger, silencing him. "You brought a civilian into this building. You challenged official records. You stirred emotion where procedure should have sufficed." Daniel's voice was steady. "Angela Brooks saved officers' lives." Weaver leaned back. "And she was thanked, privately." Daniel frowned. "She was erased." Weaver's eyes sharpened. "That's your interpretation." Lewis finally spoke. "It's not just his." Weaver glanced at him. "Careful, Captain." The word hung heavy. Daniel felt a chill. "This department has a history, a reputation. People trust us because we don't chase headlines or reopen wounds that have healed." Daniel leaned forward. "They healed crooked." Weaver stared at him for a long moment. "You're passionate. That's commendable. But passion can cloud judgment." Daniel didn't flinch. "So can fear." Lewis closed his eyes briefly. Weaver stood. "This conversation doesn't leave this room. You will stop pursuing this matter. You will stop speaking to the press, and you will stop involving Ms. Brooks." Daniel felt his pulse hammer. "No," he said quietly. Lewis snapped his eyes open. Weaver turned slowly. "No," he repeated. Daniel met his gaze. "With respect, sir, no." Weaver smiled thinly. "Then let me be clear. Your career can end quietly or loudly. That choice is yours." Silence filled the room. Lewis stared at Daniel, something like regret flickering across his face. Daniel stood. "If my career survives by burying truth, it's not worth keeping." Weaver's smile vanished. "You're dismissed," he said coldly. Daniel left without another word. Outside, the air felt heavy. Daniel sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. His phone buzzed. A text. "Unknown number." "You're digging where you shouldn't." Daniel deleted it. Then another came through. "Unknown number. People get hurt when stories change." He shut off his phone. Across town, Angela Brooks sat at her small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. Her daughter, Naomi, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You shouldn't have gone back there," Naomi said quietly. Angela sighed. "I didn't plan to." Naomi's eyes were sharp. They never forget when someone embarrasses them. Angela looked at her daughter. "I didn't embarrass anyone. I survived." Naomi softened. "I'm just scared," she admitted. Angela reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "So am I," she said. A knock came at the door. They both froze. Angela stood slowly. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, rain dotting his jacket. "Am I too late?" he asked. Angela shook her head. "No." He stepped inside. Naomi studied him carefully. "You the cop who won't quit?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Seems so." Angela poured him tea. He told her everything. The meeting, the threats, the unspoken warning. Angela listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat very still. "They want you quiet," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. "And if you don't stay quiet, they'll make me an example." Angela nodded slowly. "You can walk away. I won't blame you." Daniel shook his head. "I already tried once. I regretted it for 12 years. Angela closed her eyes. "When that building burned, I thought I was going to die, but I kept going because I believed someone would do the same for me." She opened her eyes, meeting his. "Maybe this is that moment for you." Daniel swallowed. "I don't know how this ends." Angela smiled faintly.
"Neither did I," she said, "when I walked into that fire." The next morning, a reporter from the local paper called the Precinct. By noon, a blogger had posted an anonymous tip. By evening, social media had a name: the woman they forgot. Captain Lewis watched the news from his office, his face pale. Deputy Chief Weaver slammed his door. Daniel sat in his patrol car, phone buzzing nonstop. Angela stood in her living room, staring at the television as her face filled the screen. The past was awake now, and it wasn't asking permission. By morning, the story was everywhere. Not the way Daniel Harris had imagined, not neatly explained, not carefully contextualized. It came like a crack in the dam. A local news segment ran first, shaky footage from outside the precinct paired with a grainy photograph of a younger Angela Brooks standing in front of a burned-out apartment building. "Former volunteer credited with saving officers' lives allegedly omitted from official reports," the anchor read carefully. By lunchtime, the headline had changed. "Cop says black woman saved precinct. Records say otherwise." Daniel sat in his patrol car, engine off, radio silent, phone vibrating endlessly in his lap. He didn't answer it. He watched people pass on the sidewalk, normal life unfolding while his world tilted sideways. A knock on the window made him jump. Officer Martinez stood there, expression unreadable. "They want you inside," Martinez said. "All of you." Inside the precinct, the tension thickened the air. TVs mounted in the lobby replayed the same clips over and over. Angela's face, the fire, Daniel's interview from the night before, clipped, cautious but unmistakable. Captain Lewis stood near the bullpen, arms crossed tightly. Weaver wasn't there. That was worse. Daniel was escorted into a small conference room. Waiting inside were internal affairs, a city attorney, and a woman he didn't recognize, sharply dressed, eyes like polished glass. "Officer Harris," the attorney began, "you are being placed on administrative leave pending review." Daniel nodded once. "I understand. You will surrender your badge and service weapon." He did. The metal felt heavier than it ever had. Across town, Angela Brooks's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Neighbors knocked, old friends resurfaced, strangers left messages ranging from gratitude to venom.
Her daughter Naomi hovered nearby, phone in hand. "Mom," she said quietly, "there's a video of you on TikTok. 2 million views." Angela shook her head. "I don't want to be famous." Naomi swallowed. Too late. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was a reporter. Angela didn't answer. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. Hands that once pulled men from fire. Hands that shook now. Daniel sat alone in his apartment, staring at the wall. His badge lay on the table. His phone buzzed. A voicemail. "Captain Lewis." Daniel listened. "Dan, I'm sorry. I tried to slow this down. Weaver's furious. City Hall's involved now. Be careful." Daniel closed his eyes. The truth had outrun all of them. By evening, a whistleblower document surfaced online. Old incident reports, redacted names, discrepancies highlighted in yellow. Angela Brooks's name appeared once, misspelled, buried, easy to overlook. But it was there, and so was a handwritten note in the margin. "Civilian assistance instrumental, no follow-up." The internet did the rest. Pundits debated. Comment sections exploded. Some called Angela a hero. Others accused her of exaggeration. A few demanded arrests. Daniel watched it unfold from his couch, powerless. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "This is Angela," her voice said. He exhaled. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to—" "It's okay," she interrupted gently. "I lived through worse." He swallowed. "Are you okay?" She paused. "No, but I'm standing." They shared a quiet moment. "Whatever happens," Daniel said, "I don't regret telling the truth." Angela smiled softly. "Neither do I." The next day, the mayor called a press conference. Behind him stood Deputy Chief Weaver, face tight. "This administration takes accountability seriously," the mayor said. "We will conduct a full investigation." Weaver stared straight ahead. Daniel watched from his TV. Angela stood in her living room, arms folded. Naomi squeezed her hand. "They're scared now," Naomi whispered. Angela nodded. "They should be." Later that afternoon, Daniel received another message. This one wasn't a threat. It was a photo. A younger Daniel, standing beside Angela, soot on their faces, from the fire. He stared at it, heart pounding. A follow-up text arrived. "Unknown number. Found this in my father's old things. He never forgot her." Daniel sat back slowly. The past was speaking through people who had carried it quietly for years. That night, a candlelight vigil formed outside the precinct. Angela didn't plan to go, but when she saw it on the news, elderly residents holding signs, firefighters standing silently, she changed her mind. Daniel drove her. They stood together at the edge of the crowd. No speeches, just candles, just truth. A woman approached Angela, tears in her eyes. "You saved my husband," she whispered. Angela nodded. Daniel watched, something heavy loosening in his chest. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about remembering. But inside City Hall, doors were closing. Deputy Chief Weaver sat in his office, phone pressed to his ear. "This is getting out of control," he said sharply. A pause. "No," he continued, "we don't need to deny it. We need to discredit it." He hung.
Outside, the rain began to fall, and somewhere in the city, a long-buried file was about to resurface. The backlash didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It came softly, strategically, like a shadow slipping under a door. Daniel Harris learned that first. 2 days after being placed on administrative leave, his bank called. There was an irregularity with his account, a hold placed on his direct deposit pending review. No explanation, just procedure. By lunchtime, his landlord called asking about a complaint filed against him, noise violations, unpaid utilities, concerns about instability. Daniel laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. He hadn't had guests in weeks. By evening, the laughter was gone. Angela Brooks felt it too. The grocery store clerk, who always greeted her warmly, avoided eye contact. A note appeared, taped to her door. "Stop lying." Someone had scrawled,
Go back to where you belong across her trash bin and black marker. Her hands trembled as she wiped it off. Naomi saw it anyway. Mom, she whispered, furious. We should call the police. Angela shook her head slowly. I know exactly how that would go. On television, the narrative began to shift. A former official, unnamed of course, spoke to a cable news host. Memories are unreliable, he said. Trauma can distort perception. Another panelist chimed in. Why now? Why wait 12 years? Angela watched from her couch, jaw tight. They're saying I imagined it, she murmured. They're afraid, Naomi snapped. Daniel received an email from Internal Affairs. Subject line, additional allegations. Inside were accusations he'd never heard before. Excessive force, inappropriate language, a questionable arrest from 9 years ago, already investigated and cleared. But now, reopened. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't about accountability. This was about intimidation. Captain Lewis called that night. I tried to stop this, Lewis said quietly. Weaver's pushing hard. He wants you discredited. Daniel leaned against the wall, phone pressed to his ear. Why? He asked. Lewis exhaled. Because if you're clean, he isn't. Silence stretched. Do you still have the fire report? Daniel asked. Lewis hesitated. Yes. Then hold on to it, Daniel said. Someone's going to ask. Angela didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table long after Naomi went to bed, staring at an old photo album. Blackened faces, fire hoses, the younger version of herself, eyes fierce and determined. She whispered softly, I didn't survive all that to be erased now. A knock came at the door. She froze, then stood. Daniel was there. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Come in. They sat at the table, both exhausted. They're coming for you, she said gently. He smiled faintly. They already are. She studied him. You could still walk away. He shook his head. Not now. She reached across the table, gripping his hand. Then we stand together. The next morning, an anonymous blog post went live. The truth about Angela Brooks. It accused her of criminal history, of seeking attention, of exploiting tragedy. None of it was true, but it spread fast. Daniel slammed his laptop shut. This is character assassination, he muttered. Angela watched quietly. They've always done this. This time, people are watching. And then something unexpected happened. A retired firefighter named Tom Keller stepped forward. He was 82. He held a press conference outside his assisted living facility. I was there, he said into the microphone. Angela saved my life. More voices followed. An EMT, a nurse, a former officer. The past refused to stay buried. Inside City Hall, Weaver watched the news in silence. His assistant hovered nervously. This is spiraling, she said. Weaver's jaw tightened. No, he replied. This is contained. He reached for the phone. Daniel's phone buzzed, a message from Lewis. They're pulling your badge permanently unless you back down. Daniel stared at the screen, then at Angela. She saw his face. What? She asked. He told her. She nodded slowly. Then let them, she said. He blinked. What? She leaned forward. They took enough from me already. I won't let them take your soul too. Daniel swallowed hard. That night, another file leaked. This one couldn't be dismissed. Original dispatch audio. Angela's voice in the background. Clear, calm, commanding. Get low. Follow me. The internet erupted. The tone shifted, and for the first time, Weaver looked nervous. Somewhere deep in the Precinct archives, a locked cabinet creaked open. A file was removed, and the truth prepared to walk into the light.
The city woke up angry. Not loud angry, focused angry. The kind that doesn't burn out quickly. By morning,
Angela Brooks' name was everywhere, not as an accusation, but as a question people could no longer ignore. Who saved the precinct that night? Why was her name erased? Who benefited from the silence? Daniel Harris stood on his apartment balcony watching the sunrise, his badge resting on the table behind him like a piece of history already slipping away. His phone buzzed constantly. Former partners, old academy classmates, reporters. One message stood out. Anonymous tip uploaded to the city oversight portal. Evidence attached. He opened it. His breath stopped. Inside City Hall, a closed-door emergency session had been called. No press, no statements, just fear. Weaver sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, eyes darting as aides whispered urgently around him. "We've got the fire logs," one said. "And the audio," another added, "plus Keller's testimony." Weaver slammed his hand down. That woman was never supposed to be part of the narrative. A lawyer cleared his throat. "Sir, she is now." Across town, Angela Brooks sat at her kitchen table with Naomi, hands folded, posture calm. She wore a simple navy blouse, no jewelry, no makeup, just dignity. A knock came at the door. This time, it wasn't fear that moved through her chest. It was resolve. 2 city investigators stood outside. "Miss Brooks," one said gently, "we'd like to ask you to come with us." She nodded. "I've been waiting." The hearing room was packed, standing room only. Former officers filled the back wall, some stiff with discomfort, others openly ashamed. Daniel sat in the second row, jaw tight. When Angela entered, the room shifted. Not applause, respect. She took her seat. The chair creaked softly beneath her. And then she spoke. "I didn't ask for recognition," Angela said steadily. "I asked for an ambulance." Her voice was calm, unbreakable. "I didn't save that precinct because of a badge or a title. I saved it because people were inside, people were hurt, and someone needed to act." A murmur rippled through the room. She met Weaver's gaze. "And when I did act, I was told to disappear." Weaver's attorney objected. The chair overruled. Angela went on. "I was threatened. My children were endangered. My name was erased." She paused. "But I stayed silent because I believed the system would protect itself." Her eyes hardened. "I was wrong." The evidence was presented. Dispatch tapes, fire logs, internal emails, each one peeled back another layer. Daniel watched Weaver's face drain of color. The room buzzed, gasps, whispers, outrage. Then came the moment no one expected. Daniel stood. "I request permission to address the panel," he said. The chair nodded. He turned toward the room. "I was taught that loyalty to the badge mattered more than comfort, but loyalty to the truth matters more than both." He placed his badge on the table. "I will not wear this if it means lying." The room fell silent. Angela closed her eyes. Outside, news cameras captured every second. The city watched, and something shifted. Weaver tried to leave. Security stopped him. "Sir, you need to remain seated." For the first time in decades, he wasn't in control. A former officer stood, then another. One by one, they spoke. About cover-ups, about erased names, about fear. The dam broke. When the hearing adjourned, Weaver was escorted out, not as a leader, but as a man facing consequences. Angela stepped outside into the sunlight. Reporters shouted questions. She raised a hand. "I'm not here to tear anyone down. I'm here to make sure the next person who steps up doesn't get erased." Daniel stood beside her. No badge, no uniform, just truth. That night, the city felt different, like something long broken had finally cracked open.
But the story wasn't over yet, because the final decision, the one that would define legacy, was still coming.
The city didn't celebrate. It paused. For the first time in a long while, everything slowed, like people needed a moment to absorb what had finally been said out loud. The official announcement came 3 days later. No dramatic press conference, no flashing lights, just a statement released at 7:04 a.m., posted quietly on the city's website and read aloud during the morning news. Following a full internal and external investigation, former Deputy Commissioner Harold Weaver has resigned effective immediately. Criminal charges are pending. Beneath that line was another. The city formally acknowledges Angela Brooks for her decisive actions during the 1998 Precinct fire, actions that directly saved 12 officers and prevented the loss of critical evidence. Angela read the words at her kitchen table, the same table where she had paid bills and wiped tears and packed lunches for decades. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to the city, to herself. Daniel Harris stood outside the precinct he had served for 22 years, holding a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He wasn't scheduled to be there. He didn't wear a uniform anymore. But he needed to see it, the building, the brick walls, the flag fluttering overhead, one last time without the weight of lies pressing against his chest. An older officer approached him slowly. "I should have said something," the man muttered. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, we all should have." The officer hesitated, then extended his hand. "Thank you for finally doing it." He shook it. That was enough. Angela received a phone call that afternoon. "Miss Brooks, this is Mayor Collins' office. The city would like to invite you to a formal recognition ceremony." Angela looked around her modest living room, the couch with the faded armrest, the framed photos of Naomi growing up, the Bible on the shelf that had never moved. "I'm not much for ceremonies," she said gently. There was a pause. "Ma'am, this isn't about celebration, it's about correction." Angela thought of the years she'd been told to stay quiet, the nights she lay awake wondering if doing the right thing had ruined her life. "All right," she said, "I'll come." The auditorium was full, not packed with politicians, but with people, firefighters, retired officers, nurses, teachers, neighbors, people who understood what it meant to do the right thing and pay the price anyway. Angela sat in the front row, Naomi beside her, squeezing her hand. When the mayor stepped to the podium, the room stilled. "Today," he said, "we correct a wrong that should never have been allowed to exist." He turned toward Angela. Ms. Brooks was not just a witness to history, she was a protector of it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. They played the recovered audio. Angela hadn't heard it in decades. Her own voice crackled through the speakers, calm, commanding, fearless. "Get out. Follow my voice. I've got you." Naomi's breath caught. "That was you?" she whispered. Angela nodded. "I was just doing what needed doing." The mayor stepped down. He handed Angela a small velvet box. Inside was a medal, not flashy, not oversized, simple, solid, honest. "On behalf of the city, thank you." Angela stood slowly. She didn't smile. She didn't bow. She spoke. "I didn't save those officers because of recognition. I saved them because they were human beings." The room leaned in. "And I didn't stay silent because I was weak. I stayed silent because I believed the truth would surface on its own." She paused. "But sometimes," she said firmly, "truth needs help." Applause rose, not thunderous, but deep, the kind that comes from the chest. After the ceremony, Daniel waited near the exit. Angela spotted him immediately. They stood facing each other for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," he said. Angela shook her head. "No, you owe yourself peace." He swallowed. "I don't know what comes next for me." She smiled gently. "None of us ever do." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My church runs a youth mentorship program. They could use someone who understands consequences and redemption. Daniel stared at the paper, then nodded. I'd like that. Weeks passed. The city adjusted. Policies were rewritten. Oversight boards expanded. Names once buried were restored. Angela didn't become famous. She didn't want to. She returned to her routines, grocery shopping, morning walks, quiet evenings with Naomi. But something had changed. People looked at her differently, not with pity, with respect. One afternoon, her car stalled on the side of the road. An officer pulled over, young, nervous. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked. Angela smiled. "I am." As he helped her, he glanced at her name. "Brooks, are you?" She nodded. His posture straightened. "Thank you," he quietly said. She met his eyes. "Just do the right thing, even when it's hard." That evening, Angela sat on her porch watching the sun sink low. Naomi joined her, leaning her head against her mother's shoulder. "You don't seem angry anymore," Naomi said. Angela thought for a moment. "I'm not," she answered. "Anger needs injustice to survive." She looked out at the street. "And justice," she said softly, "finally showed up." Some stories end with revenge. This one ended with restoration. A woman who was silenced reclaimed her voice. A man who followed orders learned to follow truth. And a city remembered that integrity isn't loud, it's consistent. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stand still long enough for the truth to catch up.